himself. Haha.
This is true. That is also a benefit. Okay. I think I've got everything set how I need it. So we just wait a little bit for people to filter on in. And how's everybody's week going?
Good. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Not too bad.
It's going well.
Yeah. I lose track of which day it is. I actually got to think right now. It's Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah, I was turned around all last week and could not tell what day it was at all, ever. And it definitely feels more like Wednesday or Thursday already, even though it's just Tuesday. So
I'm nearing the end of the semester, teaching at U of R, which is my last class I'm teaching at U of R. So it's almost there.
Ooh. Last class of the year or last class in general?
Period.
Heck yeah.
I'm adjunct teaching while finishing up the PhD was one thing. It is not. I've been in adjunct life before. It's not a life I'm going to persist in. It's awful in the long term. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah. Though I do like teaching. But yeah. And it does make my schedule more straightforward in terms of the other job I have. So one thing is more reading and more video games. So
I mean, that makes sense to me. I could use more time for reading and video games right now, quite frankly. I'm somewhat blessed in knowing what day of the week it is generally because we have so much going on. So it'll be like, oh, I know it's Wednesday because either Brandon or Alon is streaming tonight. Oh, I know it's Tuesday because either podcast recording or it's book club. Oh, I know it's Thursday. Like, just constantly doing things, which is great. I love constantly doing things, but also I would like to have more time for books and video games.
Yeah, that's fair.
I sometimes feel like that meme where the guy is like, I don't have more time for X, do I? And then he walks up to like the wall of like work, sleep, eat, and all of that. And he's like, and he starts like shoving sleep out and he's like, or do I?
Yeah. I'm counting down the days, so definitely know what day of the week it is. I have Thursday and Friday off for my sister's wedding, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Congratulations to her.
It's, get this, at 7:45 a.m. on the side of a mountain. So, sunrise. So,
I mean, that's going to be gorgeous.
That face, Sharon. That one.
So early. It's like, I like it, and oh.
Is the best method just to stay awake and just
yeah, like camp up there the night before, just sleep.
Just like we used to do for those like really like crap like Ryanair flights that leave at like 5 a.m. Just stay up and party.
Yep.
Roll in tipsy to the airport at 3 a.m.
Yep. I've done that for Amtrak too, and it was like a 5:30 or 6 a.m. Ride back from New York City. It's like just
fun.
Stay up.
Hit a 24-hour diner and then on to your destination. Yeah.
So many 24-hour diners in New York City. It was great.
I wish we had them elsewhere. I wish there were 24-hour diners places.
Yeah, they're kind of limited in New York, not New York City, in Richmond, unfortunately. Yeah. Much to the chagrin of some friends who came down from New York City thinking after the bars, like, yeah, get home, then we're going to order some food. And it was like $2.50. I'm like, oh, no. You had your chance to go get some food right there. You should have.
We did cheese fries, Lauren. We successfully did cheese fries. but that's about it.
Sharon and I's routine would be to leave at like 1:30 or 2 and hit up oh gosh, what's the diner called?
Galaxy Diner.
Diner, like right before they close for milkshakes and cheese fries. All that grease.
Heck yeah.
Good stuff.
Hi, Tree.
Hello, Tree. One that I really liked, it's not open anymore, was Boca. Because Boca on Thompson was open till 3 a.m. And actually, I'd be at Curbside Cafe down the road, and every once in a while, I'd close Curbside. It's like, okay, it's 2:05. Walk half a block and get some tacos. Because they stopped serving alcohol at 2 a.m. Like, but it's just like, okay, but we're still here. Like, if you're hungry.
Oh, I miss going out.
Yeah.
We have this falafel place in DC. That's where I live. And it's open really late to like 3 a.m. And it's called Amsterdam Falafel. And it's like a Chipotle, but for falafel. And you take like all these toppings on it. And they have fries with like all these sauces. And you get out of the club and you're like, and then you eat like this big fried falafel thing and they'll like put fries in it.
Oh my God.
I want it.
Sounds delightful.
Anyway, books.
Oh, yeah.
Books, indeed. So this week, we are going to be talking about the inimitable Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams. It's a super classic. I think on average, folks that I talk to have for sure read it before. It's one of those books that I think just about everybody has picked up at some point. But I think we've had a few people who have been like, oh, this will be my first read through. Kyle, I believe you're one of those.
Yes. Funnily enough, I had a girlfriend senior year of high school who one of the things she talked about is you got to read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Senior year of high school, for reference, was 2004, 2005. And I was like, oh, that seems like a good idea. That looks fun. And I just never got around to it. And it popped up for a few years in my head. It's like, this was years after we were dating. Like, this was a good thing, good idea. I should read that. And yeah, finally, book club compelled this. Like, okay, finally reading this. It has been 16 years. The time since I should have read this can drive now. And here we are.
Tree's saying she voted for it this time, so you could try it.
I really appreciate that.
I think it's sweet.
Had you seen the movie?
Yes, I saw the movie back in, I want to say 2012 or so. The song from the Dolphins runs in my head every once in a while. It's just because it's wonderful.
There is something magical about So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is interesting because I have good recollection of the movie. I haven't seen it in years. I actually should have watched it prior to this for comparison. But I do notice some differences between them. One is the ending. So this is trying to draw a 10-year-old memory out. But I believe they actually like reconstitute the Earth or something like that in the movie or something like that, which is not true in the book. Sorry, that simulation is gone. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's also been a long time since I saw the movie, but I seem to recall that being a thing that happens.
I could see some purists not really liking that very drastic change with an adaptation. It is always fun to listen to purists talk about movie adaptations, though, because you got to accept a little, but sometimes they're right.
Now, Sharon, you just finished your reread mere minutes ago.
I did. but
Breaking
I read
news.
the whole thing and thoroughly.
Excellent. But you've also read it before, if I recall correctly.
I want to say that I had read it before, but I'm not positive. I know I definitely had seen the movie, and I have so many friends from high school and college who had read it that, you know, like called people hoopy fruits and all that. So I'm like, yeah, I know what's up here, right? So, yeah. And I was more mad at it this time than I thought I was going to be. I was like, yeah, Hitchhikers, it's, you know, it's a little goofy. All right, I'm going to read that. But I had just finished another book that had a very certain vibe, and the Hitchhikers vibe just clashed horribly with that. So as I was reading it, I was just like, But we can talk about that more later.
Fair and reasonable.
I'm interested.
And Lauren, you did not get to finish this month's book, so you're a little bit fuzzy on it, but you have read it before, right?
Yes. I took a month off and I didn't reread this one, but I read it probably like 5 to 10 years ago. I don't know, sometime in college. And interestingly enough, only like a year ago did I read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, though. So, more Douglas Adams, the obscure choice. But I remember liking it, though I think the tone got a little bit old, like the gimmicks, but I think I remember liking it well enough when I read it. So
She says she was telling someone today about the sofa stuck in the stairs and Dirk Gently. Do we want to know? Do we need to know?
It's a sofa that cannot. It's like it was brought into existence in that stairwell and it's stuck because there's no way it could have gotten in, and there's no way it can get out.
Oh my god!
Is it
And
like
so
one of
they
those? Sorry, go Josh. Go Josh.
So they have to climb over it every time they want to go up or down the stairs?
I believe so.
Oh my god!
Is it one of those situations where reminded me of many a move in my past, where it's just the stairwell curves in such a way or like turns in such a way that like there's no furniture easily getting up and down that normally, so it's just by poof.
Yes, essentially that.
Oh my god, that's many a movie nightmare.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. Tree says he has a computer simulation on his computer trying different configurations to try and get it out, and he does need to climb around it every time. So that's amazing. I may need to read that because that sounds precisely like my kind of book experience. So starting the conversation off, I picked up really quickly, like we're talking like first 5 pages quickly, that Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett traveled in a very similar sort of attitudinal circle. But it seems to me that where Douglas Adams is like, well, you know, people on average, they're not terribly creative, they're a little lazy, they're not evil, so to speak, but they're gonna just do what they're gonna do, and you're gonna live with kind of the consequences, and it's gonna be fine. Where Terry Pratchett is more like, at their core, people are good and they know like what to do in a situation of badness, but also people are kind of self-centered, and so like things can turn out where like they're like, well, I need to look out for me, like cut me own throat Dibbler selling hokey tools to people who think they're going to go hunt dragons. You know, like it's not that cut me own throat is evil so much as it is he's opportunistic. I feel like Douglas Adams is like, like if you put the two of them in chairs facing each other, I think Terry Pratchett would come out on the side of humanity, where Douglas Adams would come out on the side of, we may as well just wipe the whole slate clean.
I would agree with that analysis.
A la Hyperspatial's Expressway.
And I think Terry Pratchett's characters have a couple more dimensions to them too. I was getting real cranky about the just lack of dimension, and like everybody just felt very very negative, or like just not caring at all in this book. And I didn't remember that. Like I remember like being amused by the movie, and but not thinking that it was the greatest thing ever. And I think that the reason that I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever is because I couldn't really get behind any of the characters. And rereading the book, I'm just like, I don't really like anybody here. Like the situations are maybe funny, but like it's like what Lauren said, is like maybe it's the comedy's a little tired now.
I think both of you are hitting on one of the ways that I think Terry Pratchett writes his characters with a little bit more love and intent to be liked. And so you like them more because he wants you to, and he likes them. And I don't think Douglas Adams particularly likes his characters or cares about you liking them. I think he wants you to be amused and to be like, I think it's more about playing with some of the concepts and the absurdity and the satire and stuff than it is concerned with being character driven.
Yeah, I don't think he likes humans much, because even the computers and the robots that he gave human personalities to, or whatever, to be programmed with human personalities, like none of them were particularly depicted as flattering, and not just like Marvin being depressed all the time, but Eddie, the ship's computer, both of the personalities of Eddie were ones that the comedy, the situations were making fun of. Helpful young guy Eddie was just annoying, and they were so mean to him. And then it was maternal Eddie was make sure to take your coats. And they were shut up. And why do you hate people so much?
What it reminded me a little bit of is, has anybody seen the British Office? Or
a couple episodes, yeah.
Some of those brands of British humor, where it's very cutting, the difference between the American Office, not that I've seen much of either, and the British Office, where the characters are not likable. Michael Scott as a character is there's no kind of heart of gold charm like there is in the American one, where you hate him but you're oh, okay. He has some moments of vulnerability. Oh, I love the IT Crowd. One of my favorites. Have you seen Black's Books? That's getting sidetracked, but anyway, watch Black's Books.
Yeah, the British Office is kind of like that, where it's just they're not good people.
Yeah,
the boss, for example, is a sociopath. I remember watching one with the one kind of well-known actor for looking really awkward, tall, gangly, and awkward, who is also in Pirates of the Caribbean, along with other things. He had the one with the fake eye in Pirates of the Caribbean. He's a total creep in The Office, for example. Just not a redeeming quality about him. And that's kind of the thing here too. There aren't straight up creeps, for example, but for example, Arthur Dent is just kind of a guy trying, but really he's a person where things happen to him.
Very interesting things, but he does kind of get just tumbled along.
Yeah, he's
I was thinking,
what's going on?
I was thinking very much that Hitchhikers and this whole story is just kind of you're trying to make a meal out of salsa and chips, and like each character is just like a vehicle for like the toppings. It's like, well, this can bring cheese and salsa to me, but like it's not a meal because, you know, like I didn't feel any connection to any of these characters. I didn't really I kept like being like, and when do we like really learn what's up with Arthur? Like when do we hear more about him? And he's just like, a thing happened. A thing happened. Ugh. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. All right. I guess you're a nice guy who's having some stuff happen to you. Don't care.
Yeah. Even Trillian, who's someone who made the explicit decision to leave Earth with expectation she would never come back. And that's like probably the most interesting character basis out of any of them. Even she's like, okay, she's just this side character who just has a couple of interesting observations about, like, for example, how the probability drive works and stuff like that, being the one that's kind of recognizing that. But she's not a dynamic character.
It's weird because it's like she has some of the more like she cares about more things in like in the few lines that she has, you know, you like learn like what she studied and like why she was probably interested enough to leave Earth. You kind of like wonder a little bit about like the like a throwaway response, like throwaway sentences, like when she learns that Earth has been destroyed, where she like feels like she doesn't know how to feel about it. And like there are some interesting things there that like the other characters don't ever really have that. Like Arthur a little bit. There's talk about like he doesn't know how to feel about like thinking about that his parents and his sister are dead, and he's just like, I don't know. But like his response was like he couldn't figure out how to care, and like Trillian, there's like a couple of references to things that she clearly cared about at some point. Like she doesn't want Zaphod to mess with the like ship, like when it's trying to do its job, and she's like, we're going to do this right. But also she's there because she's just happens to be that girl from that party.
She ties the crew together just by like, well, the plot reasons, and does seem to have the most hinted at depth, but yeah, it's definitely a character more about not characters, definitely a story more about the what happens and how weird this is, and then satirical commentary about that. And she's just another vehicle for that.
Do you guys feel like that, like kind of like getting dragged along in action, like quality to the characters, or like particularly the humans? Do you think that's an intentional commentary on how most people just get dragged through the universe by circumstance, or do you think it's like a writing, like it just kind of accidentally happened that way because this satire was like more important part of the story? Or do you think it was like an intentional choice, sort of a maybe commentary on people?
I think it was an intentional choice. This delves into my thoughts reading Douglas Adams talk about just the question of the meaning of life, and even that, and just like how people just are dragged along through this life, but then what is the meaning of life, and well, what is the question to ask that question type of deal, that it's all tied together, because for one thing, that question might be different for different people, though apparently we know the answer. We just need another supercomputer to figure out what the question is for that answer. I have something for this, which is where I think Douglas Adams definitely would be well read in some areas, and a couple of lines from Nietzsche's On Truth and Lies in a Non-Moral Sense, literally the first 2 sentences of that work, that seem to tie in a lot with how certain things are described in Hitchhiker's Guide. And let's see. Once upon a time, in some out-of-the-way corner of that universe, which is dispersed into numberless twinkling solar systems, there was a star upon which clever beasts invented knowing. That was the most arrogant and mendacious minute of world history, but nevertheless, it was only a minute. I feel Nietzsche is criticizing the whole concept of just true knowledge and truth with all these different perspectives, and then like does things like comparing like what is our perspective compared to that of the fruit fly type of stuff. They're both truths in a way, but that tone, that and that what's the word, misanthropic attitude towards people and their conceit about themselves that Nietzsche has seems really similar to how Douglas Adams approaches it. Douglas Adams actually has a very similar line to that. Was it like one day God created the world, and I think I remember the movie quote version more than the actual book quote, and it's just that was generally considered a very bad thing, or something like that. So it's just like, yeah, we're just kind of being carried along. Sometimes people think a little highly of themselves, but really just don't know anything, and then even the improbability drive is literally driving the plot in random spaces like life. So that's my long spiel.
I don't know. I think that at least I know nothing about Nietzsche, but I mean, it's hard to argue with that tone and vibe. Like, I think you're dead on there. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good capturing of the tone itself. For me, I like my protagonist characters, even if they're kind of bumbling dolts, I like them to be interested in the adventure at some point. And I feel like Arthur spends the entire adventure, he navigates it to his best ability, but he spends the entire adventure with his heels in the dirt. Like, they are literally like carrying him from plot point to plot point, and he's basically like, when do I get to go lay down though? Like, because you think about some of the classic heel draggers of history. You've got your Sam from Lord of the Rings, who starts out being kind of like, I don't know if we should be doing an adventure like this. It sure does sound mighty dangerous. And then Frodo's like, we're doing it. And Sam's like, well, I guess I'm with you then, like to the ends of the Middle Earth. And like at that, I like that turn. But if we never have that turn, then it's basically like having that one person who's at the party who you drove with, and they're like, when can we go home? I'm so tired and I want to go home.
Great.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great.
I like that.
He may, to a degree, have that turn near the end. The very last chapter has the line, you're in the video. The very last chapter has the line, since he was going to have to live in the place, he reasoned, he better start finding out something about it. When he starts reading the guide more thoroughly, it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
gotta like start learning about this broader world. But yeah, up until then, it's just like, oh, like just what's going on now? What? So,
and I'll give him credit for situations such as very early in the book. They're told that they're going to be subjected to Vogon poetry and then thrown out an airlock. And not only does he listen to the poetry, but he then is like, oh, I really enjoyed the subconscious elements of whether or not being is of the most import. Like it just like complete spouting nonsense that sounds like poetry appreciation. And then Ford's like, oh, genius. And then they're both still shuttled off to get thrown out the airlock because the Vogon is like, death is too good for them.
I love that slam of basically literary critics / freshman poetry and philosophy students.
And bureaucracy all in one.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
very efficient.
There was
think-
a very... Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
I was just going to say, like, literally every observation about any human at all in this book is a slam on that person, no matter what.
Even the bartender.
It was...
Dunking on everyone.
Oh my God. It was Guards where Terry Pratchett wrote that there were the bookworms in L space that would leave little piles of literary criticism behind them as they went. And I was like, well played, sir. Well played.
There is kind of, it's like the way you can like dunk on the haters, the literary critics, in like such a creative way is pretty good. Talent.
Yeah, especially because those are both cases where it's like, what are you gonna do? Complain about it? Like, are you gonna just prove me right?
Critique me, I dare you.
I overall really enjoyed it. It's kind of whimsical, and I found the misanthropy really funny. I do think the lack of like depth to characters, the fact that things are more happening to the characters. One, I do think, like we said, we're kind of intentional. Like things just happen to us in our lives. But I do think that would start to wear on me if this was what we're talking about before the stream started. The idea of when books get too long, but I think it works for, what is this, 160 pages? I think it's a little more. It's 216 pages.
It's a fairly digestible read. It's fairly small, those pages are, and a lot of those pages, half of them are taken up by the chapter number. So they're not super long. It's not a super long book. What I'd be intrigued to explore a little bit further, and I don't know if you've fully said your piece on this yet. I'm hoping you haven't. Sharon, when you were talking about the book you read before had certain overtones to it, and you saw those overtones echoed in Hitchhiker's Guide, and you were just like, ah! Like what were you seeing that you were like, I'm gonna come through these pages and I'm gonna throttle Douglas Adams? Like,
I think it was that like lack of caring attitude from everybody. Like there's no part really where any of the characters are like sympathetic or emotional about anyone else in the story. Like there's no one who's like, oh man, like, yeah, your planet blew up, sucks. Like, and they like hit Marvin, and like even when you're like, well, maybe Trillian is being nice, like Trillian is like, oh, I can't stand that robot. Like they're all just like mean to each other, and like no one is nice. And so and like I don't need my characters to be nice. I love a jerk, but like they also don't care about it. It seems very much like they don't care about anything outside of things. Like there are a couple of things, like Ford is excited to be hitchhiking again. He's not stuck on Earth anymore, but like you still don't really know what about that is exciting to him, and it's just not enough. And the book that I read before was very much going into characters who try so hard to do things right and are very like sensitive to the people around them and how their actions affect them. And like the whole kind of vibe of the book is about that. And so like reading that was kind of like heavy and a little bit of a downer, but it was like a really good book. And then I was reading this and everybody's just like such a jerk. I'm like, ugh.
I can definitely see that, like a middle finger in the face of all of the characters of the previous book that are like trying their best.
Yeah, it's just ugh. And they're just getting knocked down over and over again. And then this one's just like, yeah, we're gonna knock you down and we don't care. Bye.
I did kind of have a feeling as I was reading through again, which this is not something I felt at all during my initial read through because I was like 14. During this read through, I was like, man, this is like the polar opposite of something like A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet or why am I so bad at names? The book that we just read that was about the team of scientists. To Be Taught If Fortunate. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. This is the opposite of To Be Taught If Fortunate.
The polar opposite of To Be Taught If Fortunate, and almost the polar opposite of A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which are both very character focused. Mm-hmm. They're all about the dynamics between the characters. It's all about like how do the characters navigate these difficult situations they find themselves in.
Sacrifice for the greater good.
Exactly. And so like you end up with this situation where the whole thing is very built on like the world, or in this case, the universe, and the things happening in the universe. And then the characters are just there, kind of like Sharon was saying, just to draw stuff to the plot and to help the plot continue moving. And when you've read something like To Be Taught If Fortunate or A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, you end up realizing that some of the best and most fun books to read are the ones that are full of characters, regardless of what those characters are doing. Because To Be Taught If Fortunate is really like 50 or 60 pages about really cool alien stuff, and then like 120 pages about like interpersonal dynamics and how to get along with people and the philosophy of what they're doing. Like it's like radically different.
Give me a meal. Give me a meal. They all just seem so one-dimensional.
I think it's just different like objectives of books.
Yeah.
I think Douglas Adams has been a contrarian to many other books that came before and many other tropes. In terms of like being very cynical about people and about the questions they ask and the importance they have in certain questions or certain creations, things they made and stuff like that. But he definitely has like little snipes all over the place, like the easy one against politicians, for example, and stuff like that. That's an easy one because I feel like any author could just dunk that one home without much effort.
When was this originally published?
I just looked that up. I think 79.
79. Okay.
So like it probably was
later
like
than I thought.
Fun and cool and quirky at the time, but now I'm tired.
That was a lot later than I thought.
Yeah. Is Adams British? Yeah. Okay.
I think so. Yes.
Yes.
I'd be shocked if he wasn't.
Very sure.
British. Yeah. It's like it is either he was British or he was very much miming some British humor style.
Fair.
Because I was thinking like
Cambridge.
Yeah. If depending on how much he's influenced by American dynamics, this was soon after Nixon resignation and that corruption, but also the hippie movement, for example, only ended like a decade before, and that was more international movement. So that was probably something that he experienced. So just thinking about the cynicism he seems to project via this book. But it's like the cynicism with this center of like, but the world is really interesting.
I mean, Thatcher was in charge then.
I couldn't remember when she became prime minister.
I just Googled it.
Yeah.
I was like, pretty sure it's the 80s.
Yeah.
Served as prime minister 1979 to 1990.
So she just, as he was writing this, she was campaigning, or rather her party was campaigning, and gained majority, or she replaced the former majority leader.
Oh, hold on. Yep. Nope. I think that's right.
Yeah.
This is the era that I'm watching in The Crown right now, but
that was one of the things that came up as the populate. It was like Margaret Thatcher on The Crown, and I was like, nope, not that one.
Yeah. So but we're talking like not long after some kind of idealism of like free love, breaking down boundaries and things like that. We're talking a period where philosophy and literature was very, very stuck up about itself. Thinking of some of the thinkers from that time period. But also a very interesting period where the space age was in full swing, and things like that. That is only 10 years ago. Before that, when the U.S. had landed on the moon, and actually the U.S. did multiple missions to the moon after that. So Tree says that he backpacked across Europe as a hippie type person. So yeah, that would definitely contribute to that vibe. I was actually thinking that the whole Hitchhiker's Guide really had this like carefree backpacking experience to it, where a person's just kind of a consumer of the world around them without engaging too much in that world, which is, so maybe he's kind of making fun of himself with that.
That would explain some of the shallowness of the characters, because if you're backpacking cross country, then you're doing stuff like couch surfing. You're getting to know people, but you're not getting to know them for more than like a few days at a time or a week or two. Like most people who do couch surfing are going to be, they're just going to be like rolling on through. They're not there to hang out. They're on their way somewhere else typically.
Maybe that's why characters have no dimension. They're all just one thing. I spent one day with you and I've categorized you as this. So that's how you are all the time.
Yeah. Even his perception of Arthur, and he lived on Earth for like 15 years and I guess picked Arthur as his favorite human. So he saved his life instead of anyone else's. Even his perception of Arthur is just like, oh, this is just a bloke I go get a drink with. And stuff like that. Seems to be how he knows him. Yeah, very much a shallow, like, world experience, universe experience, galaxy experience to be more specific, kind of approach to life. Definitely just grabbing an experience there, and it looks like Arthur's picked up on that, because now he's with this group and he's stuck without a home to go back to.
Yeah, I didn't consider that before, but that would make a ton of sense as far as like why everything is all vignettes. Like it's basically vignettes from the beginning of the book to the end, both for characters and for scenes. And yeah, he explores some of the deeper meaning behind some of that stuff. That was part of why I compared him to Terry Pratchett, is because he's got those asides where he's talking about like, oh, the development of the infinite improbability drive, they figured out how to do the finite improbability drive. That was easy. No problems there. They were trying to figure out how to make it infinite. And then he kind of goes into like the details of all of that. And then the person who invents it gets really famous and then gets what was it, like chased by a mob of angry physicists because they figured out that they can't stand anything less than a smartass. And like even in his like kind of like cute asides, like Terry Pratchett's tone is always like, well, here's something like cute and kind of quirky that's happening in the background of these big scenes you're seeing play out. And you can, I think that's part of why I like the way Terry Pratchett does footnotes, is because you end up with this situation where if you're, I know people, I can't imagine who they are as people in their daily lives, but I know people who are like, I really like Terry Pratchett, but I skip over the footnotes. I feel like they mess up the whole flow of the book for me. And I'm like, you're missing like a third of the book. And they're like, I know he writes so many of them. I just like, I don't know. I don't want to be reading through the page and then flip to the bottom and then try to figure out where I was on the page. And I'm like, so finish reading the page and then read the footnote. And they're like, yeah, but by then I have to remember what he was talking about. So I have to flip back up to where the footnote was. And then I have to flip back. And I'm like, how are you reading like this?
Yeah.
But it strikes me that Douglas Adams doesn't give you that opportunity. There's a couple of footnotes in there, yes, but the majority of what Terry Pratchett would put as footnotes, Douglas Adams is like, this is going to be a page and a half and you're going to read it.
It doesn't have the same feel when it's a footnote. A footnote is like, well, the whole thing is like, and as an aside, pause, think for a moment, and then we'll go back to the action. Instead, it's just like in line with it, right. For what, and then you realize like, wait, there's just only been a few lines of dialogue that happened between these characters with all this context given for it, and I've read 2 pages.
It feels like the footnote style preserves sort of like the narrative format while also providing asides, where like you're with Hitchhiker's Guide, you lose some of that like narrative like book story format where you're like, you'll be in a scene and then all of a sudden you're like over here and then you like loop back to that scene and you're like, okay, now we're going along, instead of like the scene and then like, ooh, you can just like dip down for a little bit.
Well, and I'll grant credit that the way Douglas Adams writes it is it's usually during a scene transition. Yeah. So it's not like you're dropping out of a scene, going through the footnote and then dropping right back into the same scene. But it ends up feeling, and I don't know if anybody else got this vibe as well, it ends up feeling those like interstitched like little like footnote type factoids feel like Family Guy asides. Where it's like, well, this is better than the time that Margaret Thatcher came to town, like, and then there's a whole like thing about Margaret Thatcher, and then they take you to the next scene. Like, it's kind of that.
I wasn't sure what you were talking about, but now that makes sense. Yeah, like a callback, and then you go do that bit, and then it's the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach for sure.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Shay.
I was just gonna say I really do like what you brought up, Josh, of comparing Terry Pratchett's writing to Douglas Adams, because like they were both rattling around in my brain, and it was like it's this like quirky comedy thing. And it's like Terry Pratchett, but like Terry Pratchett didn't bother me like this. Is it just because of this book that I read right before reading this book that I'm so annoyed by? Or we have guests. But yeah, I think that just that I'm distracted. Someone else talk.
Fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
Tree says the book was based on the radio series, and in the radio series, the book had a narrator. And I think most of these links were originally meant to be the guide's character.
Okay.
I didn't know it was based on a radio series first.
I also
That came
didn't know
before
that.
the book.
That actually translates well to the movie. Now, my recollection from watching the movie, because there was a narrator voice as a different person altogether from the characters. So, like, it made these interludes, like, and by the way, and then cuts back to the action. It's like, oh yeah, they were about to say something here. Like it works really well in the movie format, which makes sense. That same thing would work well in a radio series format if that's what it was originally from. That connection would be the same.
That would explain why the film adaptation worked as well as it did. Because usually when you adapt a book, I mean, I can think of some notable exceptions, Jurassic Park being chief among them, where the movie adaptation is nearly as good as the book, or even in some cases better than the book. Like Lord of the Rings went for something radically different from the book for the films, and I respect that. Like, it follows a lot of the key moments, but you also miss a lot of things. But I get that both from the sense that, one, if you tried to put an entire J.R.R. Tolkien book into a movie, you'd end up not with 3 films and a director's cut totaling something like 12 hours, but with something even wilder than that. But the way J.R.R. Tolkien writes has a sort of like, here's the main content, and then here are the notes that I wrote for it, and then here's the companion book, which you can read if you want to know the rest of the notes that I wrote about literally everything else. And so the movie gives you the option to go, I don't want any of that additional info. I just want the plot. Just give me just the plot, please. And then if you want more, you can be like, well, the books are like twice as long. Ooh.
Yeah, then we see all that background in the companion book you're referencing, the Silmarillion. And it's like, oh, and then some of that stuff, and then some of the other background stuff gets thrown into The Hobbit to make a 3-movie series, and that didn't work very well, did it at all? And funnily enough, main character of The Hobbit is the same actor as the main character of Hitchhiker's Guide to bring it back, Martin Freeman.
This does kind of make me want to rewatch the movie because it's been, again, like many years.
I love Martin Freeman, and think he was perfectly cast for that as just being the guy that just like stuff happens to. He's like, what? Just as things happen one after another.
That's actually a great comparison to draw. I think I was thinking of Sam, but actually Bilbo is significantly better as a line to draw, because here's this guy who has his old friend wizard just show up on his doorstep and be like, oh, and I brought friends, and there's 13 dwarves in his house all of a sudden. And he's like, whoa, what? I'm sorry, what? And they're like, you're our burglar. And he's like, I didn't agree to anything of the sort. And then like partway through, it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, adventure is kind of neat. And if I wasn't here, like, we wouldn't be accomplishing some of these things. So I'm glad I was here. So like, I think that's why a character that spends the entire book dragging their feet drives me nuts, is because like Arthur has a ton of opportunities to be like, you know what? I'm in it. I may as well be in it. And to end book 1 with him being like, well, I guess I should, I'll read more of this Hitchhiker's Guide and figure out what's going on. It's not like I can go back to Earth. It's like, that's a little late for me, friendo.
Yeah. When they went down to the cave.
Go ahead.
So it's like when we went down to the cave, it's like, oh yeah, you can stay up here. I'm like, what are you doing? Follow them. This is really neat. But then he actually got his own experience, but he just stumbled into, by good luck, an experience where he actually got to see other stuff they didn't get to see.
How improbable. You were going to
He's
say,
just
Lauren?
the main character by virtue of just being a guy.
Yeah, just to say that I think that's I don't think Douglas Adams like wants you to particularly like him, like Arthur, or like feel that like, yeah, he's being a go-getter. Like, I just don't think that's his view of people.
Well, and in particular, it seems to not be his view of British people, because it's like all of the people you're introduced to who are humans are all like a little bit self-centered. They really just want their quiet Sunday afternoon. Like, and it's like, come on, guys, you are on an epic adventure. Enjoy it, gosh darn it. Enjoy it.
How characters are first introduced says a lot often about how they're portrayed throughout. In some books that the introduction is meant to kind of put the wool over your eyes as to what they're really like later. But in this case, there's no twist or turn. There's no surprise or portrayal. It's just exactly who they are. Think of what the first experience we have of Arthur Dent is. He's just laying down in the mud in front of his house saying, no.
Even before that, you've got him waking up in the morning very groggy and a little hungover, pointedly ignoring the bulldozers outside of his home, going about his morning routine and being like, yellow. Well, I'm going to brush my teeth. And it's like, Arthur, look out your window. Pick up that it is not usually so yellow outside. You oblivious bean.
Yeah, and then I forget his name, the hitchhiker. Your first experience of
Ford Prefect.
Yeah, what a great name. Your first experience of him is just like, man, I want to get off this planet. And then like just kind of walk up to Arthur. It's like, hey, we need to go to the pub. What are you doing? Don't worry, we'll get them to cover for you here. Like, just no interest at all in what his plight is. Which, well, granted, if he had cared about Arthur's plight, then Arthur would have died with everyone else. But it's still like, none of that. Nothing about what you care about. So it's one of those, like, the first presentation of each of these characters is who they are. First presentation of Trillian is someone who knows a bit more and is a bit more aware of everything going on than everything else, than everyone else. But then you don't get too much more on that.
Yeah.
I like that. I do think the first introduction to a character is like really important. Yeah. Also, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency does have a TV show.
Ooh.
And it has Elijah Wood, so.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
bring
right.
Bring it all around.
There's also, I don't know if anybody else saw this.
Elijah Wood is the dopey dude that gets dragged through adventure in that one.
Of course.
It was his turn. Mm-hmm. I don't know if everybody else saw this, and I don't know if it's out yet, but there was a trailer dropped for the BBC for a Guards TV series.
I did see that.
And Sharon shared it with me, and I watched it, and I was like, Lady Sybil Ramkin is nowhere near the mountain of a woman that she should be. But other than that, I'm intrigued.
Speaking of casting decisions.
Yes.
The Six of Crows book is getting a TV series.
Oh my god, I forgot about that too.
And apparently, people are a little bit upset because the actress was cast to play Nina isn't like fat. She's just straight sized, I guess, or whatever. So, but I've only seen the teasers, but I think there's like a full trailer out. So go check it out. It looks really good.
Ooh.
The first episode might be out yet. I'm not sure.
Oh, nice.
It's not called The Six of Crows. It's like Shadow and Bone or something.
That is.
Isn't
also a tied. That's the other.
Yeah. Isn't
Part-
that the other series?
That happens in that world.
Yeah. I think they might be tying together multiple series at the same time. In that world.
Ambitious.
I did see Kaz and like all the gang, I think so.
Okay. Well, maybe since they're doing it as a TV series, the idea is we're going to do the Six of Crows plot line, and then we're going to circle over to the Shadows and Bone plot line after that. Maybe that's the concept. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I guess it tells you about the wider world going on, which Six of Crows kind of hints at. Though Six of Crows only really has 2 locations. So.
Well, I mean,
Go
classic heist novel. You have the planning location and then the heist location. Go on, Sherry.
I was just going to request of the universe that we have a Gideon the Ninth movie or something.
Oh,
That'd be nice.
please. I want it.
On it so bad.
Please.
like, can you imagine how goth that movie would be? It would be so good.
Yes, I can, and I'm excited.
I think like probably more than 50% of my friends would explode upon like viewing such a movie just from like sheer joy and overstimulation across the board. Just like, Lauren, you might be one of them.
Costumes and makeup for that would be made. The budget would have to be so big, just to like get that on point and everything.
Yeah.
That's also one of those movies where it would be like best not to always show the hints of monstrosities, just like actually just hint at them to accelerate the horror of everything going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'd have to be careful with not over CGIing it.
But yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't read Harrow the Ninth, it did get nominated for the 2021 Hugo Awards. I don't know if people saw.
That's awesome. That book's excellent.
I'm
very
I'm
different.
still in the middle of it. I was just talking to Josh about this. I haven't gotten to the part where I can't put it down yet, but it's apparently coming. So
you're at the part where it's like, what's going on?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I'm not sure what's happening here.
It's so challenging to read at that point.
There's a lot of questions that are stacked up on you at the moment, and you are not quite done having questions stacked up on you. But the instant the answers start coming, they come in a cavalcade, and then it's like, whoa, wait, what? Whoa, and then it's just like, oh, that's the end of the book. Oh, well, most of my questions were answered. I have a couple of new ones now.
I didn't know this could be a possible question in the first place.
Exactly. So it seems to me like we have exhausted Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I wanted to make sure that we touched base before moving on to next month's book. If anybody has any final thoughts, comments, anything they wanted to get out there at this point.
So, part of the reason I referenced Nietzsche already for this is we didn't talk as much about it, but the idea of the question you ask I believe it's in the Gay Science. If you ever want to read short aphorisms, they're really funny by Nietzsche. But I was having trouble finding it. It says he makes fun of and critiques the idea of like the questions you ask being objective. That the questions you ask actually have a lot of meaning to them, and they are highly framed by what you're trying to seek in the first place, and to a degree, they're based off what you already know. So you don't ask a question based off of things you don't know, like frameworks you don't know. So that's it's a really interesting critique of philosophy in general and other forms of knowing, like different forms of science. Nietzsche attacked everyone, and it's something that Douglas Adams picks up too with the question, capitalize, where what is the question? Well, like the one question, of course, like these guys that haven't really thought about what that question is, and because of that, the computer, after a very, very long time, spits out an answer 42. It's like, well, that's the answer. I'm sure about that. But I think it's a little messianic was the line right there. Like, one who comes after me will have to produce the question. So it's this examination of what is the big question, and the fact that our own perspective is going to cultivate that question, and it's something we got to think through, and it's not a very clear thing, and it's heavily based off what we already know, which Arthur Dent silly knows a lot more than he did at the beginning of that book, as does the reader, in a way. So that kind of wraps up my observation. Like, one of the biggest praises I have of Adams here is just examining that question and thinking about it, and then pointedly not giving the answer of what the question is. So.
I mean, I think some of the best sci-fi leads the reader to ask themselves questions that it is not having any plans of answering, such as To Be Taught If Fortunate being like, what would you do? And it's like, what would I do?
What is science for?
What should the goal of this be? Sharon, you got any finals?
Yeah, that just put it together for me there. Like, I was thinking about, okay, like, so the question, what is the meaning of life? Like, what are the frameworks like implied behind that question? Like, so if I asked Lauren, what's the meaning of life? And I asked Josh, if I asked Kyle, everybody would kind of have different ideas of like what's meaningful to them. I have no idea what's meaningful to any of these characters. So I have no idea what the meaning of life should be in this book, because I don't get it. I don't know what is important to any of them. So, yeah.
Well, what is meaning? Is meaning part of the question?
Like, also life. Like, are we going to address it from like a scientific standpoint? Like, there's a whole bunch of things that you can like break down out of that question, and I don't know about none of it for any of them. If you
upload your brain and your consciousness into a computer, are you still alive? What is the meaning of your life then?
Mm-hmm. What is even existence? Existence as a thing is a modern concept, actually. It's not really. It's not. So, what is existence? Is life existence? Like, that's a framework that we have now. That wasn't always the case. So yeah, I get the whole like. The characters don't really answer that at all. They don't really seem to even ask that. They're vehicles for sure.
I mean, I still enjoyed the book, but I definitely get where Sharon's coming from, where it's like I don't feel like I could gauge where any of these cast members would fall on most questions, other than potentially would you like to go back to Earth? Which I think I could answer fairly solidly for all of them. Like, it is weird to have that little of a grip on all of the main characters of a book. But having said that, let's take a look at what is to be next month's book and talk about that briefly. This is How You Lose the Time War. So next month we're going to be reading the Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone novel. I think, if I recall correctly, Lauren, this is one that you suggested initially that I think came back up into the running because one of our lovely audience members was like, we had this on the docket at one point and it didn't get selected, and I want to see it come back around because I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Lost Light, I think.
Really enjoyed this. When I read it, like I just like sat down in the morning and I like couldn't put it down all day.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I'm so excited.
That's good to hear. I've never read it.
I wanted to read this one too.
It depends on, I guess, what you're going into it looking for. It's not sci-fi. There are parts of it that take place in the future and there are parts that take place in the past, but it's not what I would consider a hard sci-fi. I mean, there is a time war, but if anything, it's a little bit more of a romance across space and time. I really liked it. So
I'm excited.
I'm really intrigued, particularly because it's going to be a like very romantic novella with sci-fi tones behind it. I have a soft spot for that sort of book, so I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm really excited to reread it.
For those folks who ordered their copies through Alpha Comics and Games, conveniently located in Willow Lawn, Richmond, Virginia, I believe they have been ordered. I have not yet heard anything about them being in, but I would suspect they will be in the next day or two, given when they were ordered. So we can expect to be hearing about those hopefully shortly. Now, the final act of business of the evening. We three book club heads have been discussing some book club changes. We wanted to be really intentional as far as like what kinds of books we're reading and, you know, when we're making selections and things like that. But something we ran into pretty quickly is that even if we set up a theme, it can sometimes be hard to fulfill that theme without doing a lot of thinking about it in advance. And then that kind of, it makes the space a little more awkward for community voting. So a thought we had as far as a way to bridge that gap between the two groups would be to run a month where Lauren makes suggestions and we have 3 books to choose from Lauren's list of suggestions. And then we vote on those 3 books and that ends up being the selection. And then the alternative, alternating months, we will have things run a little bit more like usual, where we have everybody suggest a book and we all vote on it like wild banshees, and hopefully we come out with something really quality. But this way we get to explore a little bit more of like newer sci-fi and fantasy. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I basically exclusively right now am reading graphic novels and book club books. That's all the reading I do that is not somehow social media related and or work related for that matter. And I think there's been a grand total of 1 book, Lauren, that you've suggested that I had a difficult time with. And even that one, I was like, well, oh, you know what? Thinking about it, was that a Lauren suggestion? I'm thinking of the Zero Fox Gambit.
That was mine, but I hadn't read it first.
which is fair. And like, again, like we got to the end of it and it was like, this was fascinating. Like this was a really interesting exploration of a lot of really cool stuff. The only problem I think everybody had with it was that the author drops you into the middle of everything going on. And it's like, figure it out.
If the author just said math magic at the beginning, they'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Seriously. Once
feel-
I just applied that rule, I was like, oh, okay. And yeah.
This approach would also let me do a better job of like thinking ahead and like, okay, I know I've got to bring 3 suggestions rather than like on stream, like a scramble, like looking at my bookshelf, like what do I have to suggest?
Right. You can plan ahead.
Better thought, I think.
This will help me shop your Instagram recommendations a lot better. So that's great.
Lost Limey says that the second book in that series is so much better than Nine Fox. So for those of you who read Nine Fox and were like, this is good, but it could be better, I would say check that out.
It's sitting on my shelf. I haven't gotten around to reading it because of everything else, but I want to.
Fair.
I have so many sequels that I want to read that I haven't gotten to from book club books. We've read so many books that are good that have sequels.
Yeah. 5th season.
So
I haven't read the follow-up, and I really, really, really want to.
Oh,
also,
Lord.
She's a great follow on Twitter, by the way.
Yeah.
Jemison is.
I found out post 5th season stream that NK Jemison Twitch streams video games.
Does she really?
Yes. So if you've ever wondered what it's like to watch a Hugo nominated and awarded book author play things like Horizon Zero Dawn, you should probably go check out NK Jemison's Twitch streams.
That sounds awesome.
That's so cool.
So
Things you learn.
I would like to move us now into plugging things. If you all are good with and prepared for that. Kyle, let's start with you. Do you have anything you would like to plug?
There's been a book that's been sitting on my shelf for quite a while now. I gave it to my goddaughter a year ago for her birthday, or a year and a half ago for Christmas, actually. It's something with kind of a female lead type of character. I haven't read it myself. Daughter of the Empire by Raymond Feist and Yanni Wirtz from 1987. It's apparently a fantasy classic, and I'm really interested in it. It's been sitting there as a book that I want to get around to reading, but I can't profess to know more than that it's highly acclaimed, with a female lead, with co-authors writing the book series that I recognize both authors' names, but I don't think I've, as like well-known authors, I don't think I've read anything else by either of them. So that's the extent of my knowledge, but something that intrigues me.
Fair and reasonable and intriguing. Sharon, do you have anything you would like to plug for us this evening?
Can't think of anything other than some of the ongoing Goblin projects. I know a lot of folks have already seen or been enthusiastic about our One Page Dungeon book volume 2, which is pretty cool. Other than that, I've been living under a log and reading things. Here's the book that I read that you can read if you want to be angry at Douglas Adams and his lack of hair. Read this book and you will be so mad at literally every nice guy character you encounter.
Throttle
them all.
What is written there kind of through the person's hairline? Because it's not showing up well on camera.
The book is called Kim Ji Young, born 1982.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I got it.
It's good. It'll make you mad.
Because people care so much.
People care so much. Some care, and some don't care. They just bumble around, and you're just like, I'm not here for the bumbling right now. I need some characters to strap in.
That is both fair. That is both fair and reasonable. Lauren, what you got? Oh,
I just realized something else to plug. Actually, I'm not used to having things to plug. Josh knows about this. That as part of Goblins and Growlers get into podcasting and things like that, I will soon be doing a monthly segment. Not sure on a title for it yet, but essentially it's getting into the weeds of D&D rules, like specific feats or interaction of two feats or how a certain thing works, rather than like a more general guide type thing, trying to go in depth with certain abilities and how they could be interesting. It's going to be a monthly short podcast segment where I bring in another DM to sort of interview / bounce ideas off with over these different things. So there's a different guest DM each time. Be on the lookout for that. Of course, will be announced on the Discord and everything like that.
Excellent. I wasn't going to say anything because I wasn't sure if you were ready to announce it yet. So I was like, I'm just going to let that slide through. We're not going to worry about it, but okay.
Yeah. I just wish I had a title for it. It literally might be called In the Weeds, just because it stands out, but I'm not positive about that. That's the idea. So
I dig it. Lauren, will you be plugging your lovely blog?
Yeah, save as always.
I think I've got the link right. Let me know if I've got the link wrong.
I honestly don't know. I think there's periods between the feminist reading list, like between the words, but I'm not sure.
Is there a the? I don't know if there's a the.
I tried to Google it, and I was like, this looks right to me on the Google, but I don't have an Instagram, so I couldn't open it.
The links might work differently. There's definitely not a the. I don't know why I doubted myself and I had to check.
That's my bad.
There might not be periods because it's
a web page.
Like a web link. But anyway, yeah. So I post about and write reviews of sci-fi, fantasy, and romance, sort of through a feminist lens, mostly looking to read diverse books by diverse authors. It's a lot of fun. And I'm continuing to read manga. So
I was going to say,
caught up on My Hero. It's going all right. I'm slowing down a little bit. And for book suggestions, feel free to put in chat or in the Discord, like what kind of book suggestions you're looking for as far as book club books. Because just because I might be selecting a couple to vote from doesn't mean you guys don't have a voice. You can be like, I really liked, this tone, or I think it'd be fun to read, graphic novel, or I think it'd be fun to read something, a little bit more intricate and heavy, or do you have anything else like this other book that we read? So just let me know, at me on Discord, and I'll see what I can do. That's what I got.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I am going to talk about briefly, folks should join the Discord. At the point that you started talking about it,
Step
I put the ticker up going along the bottom, because that is a great place to reach all 4 of the nerds on the stream today. And you can also come and hang out with fellow book club members who've been talking in chat. And I was also going to mention that Quid Pro Roll is coming up here shortly on the end of its 3rd arc. So we're looking at soon having a recap episode, followed by the beginning of a new arc of stories in Quid Pro Roll. So if you're not already caught up, you can grab the most recent recap and jump right in from there. Or you can wait until the recap comes out and catch us then. Either way you decide to go, you can find us Quid Pro Roll. We're available on pretty much any podcatcher, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you look for podcasts, you can find it there. So we're really excited because right now on the current release, we were fighting a big, bad boss monster. And I think that turned out really excellent. So check it out.
With the Discord, also with Book Club, if you have other books that you're reading, like I'm going to start reading Dawn of the Empire, for example, people talk at length about other books they're reading, trying to see, hey, is anyone else reading this? I have these thoughts, that type of thing. So if you read the Book Club books, but also are like, well, I'm actually reading this too, it's a great place for book nerds.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. It's been a wonderful time chatting with all of you, reading about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, getting frustrated that the characters aren't more fleshed out, and the general Nietzschean philosophy of the universe they're in. Will... Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
I'd say On Truth and Lies in the Non-Moral Sense. It's a 10-page essay. It's a great critique of how we think about knowing and learning everywhere, if you ever want to dabble in Nietzsche. Also, it gives you some ammo against any insufferable philosophy major that looks a lot like I did when I was 22 years old, for knowledge against them. So.
Magnificent. We will be returning in this same stream place at the same stream time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, on the 18th of May, which is the day after the new tax day. So hopefully those of us, such as Tree, which are currently neck deep in taxes, will be able to breathe a sigh of relief and enjoy a little book club. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we will be catching you on the next stream. Bye, y'all.
Bye.